Call to order the meeting of the Ventura County Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board. It is Monday, October 24th at 5:34. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Gasparino.
Here.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Here.
Mr. Murphy.
Here.
Chair Hurlock.
Here. Let it be noted that we have a quorum. Will the clerk please administer the oath to those who are giving testimony tonight?
You'll need to stand too. Please raise your right hand. You and each of you, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give in the matters now pending before this board are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Thank you. The first item tonight is petition number 840, petition of Genon West LP for a regular variance from District Rule 29C, conditions on permits, violation of Federal Operating Permit 00065, attachment 59N1, condition 3. Will the representatives of the petitioner please introduce yourselves and then present your petition?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Chuck Mason. I'm the general manager at Ormond Beach Generating Station.
I'm Mike Escarcega. I'm a senior air quality engineer with GenOn.
Again, good evening, everyone. My name is Chuck Mason, as I mentioned. On behalf of GenOn West and formerly Reliant Energy at the Ormond Beach Generating Station, which is an electricity generating station, we're petitioning the hearing board for a regular variance for Ormond Beach Generating Station Unit Number 1. The purpose of the variance is to extend the deadline for Unit Number 1 ammonia slip testing, which was due by September 30th of this year, 2011. Unit 1 is currently offline and was declared unavailable for service on August 1st of 2011 due to potential safety concerns. The other generating unit, Ormond Beach, Unit 2, just completed an intensive safety inspection and repairs are complete. Since both units 1 and 2 were built about the same time and have a similar operating history, the same type of safety inspections are being conducted on Unit 1 currently. Unit 1 is undergoing X-ray inspections of all steam lines to determine their integrity, and then, if needed, appropriate repairs will be made. The work is not expected to be completed until the mid part of November of this year. The Unit 1 annual ammonia slip test could not be completed earlier this year as the unit only operator combusted fuel for 7 hours in 2011, and that was on May 15th. In fact, the unit never went online to the point of producing electricity. In fact, during the 7-hour period, no ammonia was injected into the unit because the operating temperature of the boiler was too low for ammonia injection. Based on the recent operating history of Unit 1, and because the unit is normally requested to run by the California Independent System Operator, based on system demand only, it is not expected, and we don't anticipate that Unit 1 will run the rest of this year. As GenOn does not expect to operate Unit 1 again until next summer, GenOn is requesting permission to conduct the next annual ammonia slip test on Unit 1 anytime before, but not after, September 30th of 2012. If Unit 1 is requested to operate sooner, and if the unit stays online for several or more days, every effort will be made to procure a test contractor and conduct the test sooner than the summer of 2012. Thank you.
I will address the findings. My name is Mike Escarcega. Finding number 1 regarding district rule violation. Ormond Beach Unit 1 is in violation of District Rule 59E5, source testing for ammonia and ammonia slip test, Ventura County APCD Rule 59, attachment 59N1, condition 3. These require an ammonia slip source test to be conducted not less than once every 12 months. The last ammonia test was conducted on September 21st, 2010, and therefore it has been longer than 12 months, so we are in violation of the district rule. The reason the test was not performed because the unit operated very little, as he mentioned, only 7 hours so far this year. And there was no way we could schedule a test, and as he mentioned, we didn't even inject ammonia. Regarding finding 2,
Excuse me, Mr. Escarga, could you repeat the violations? They don't seem to agree exactly with what's in the draft order.
okay, District Rule 59, E as in Edward, 5,
Got 59B.
and Ventura County APCD Permit Rule 59, Attachment 59, N as in no, 1, Condition 3.
Do you have a copy of the draft order with you?
Do you have a copy of that, Tommy?
I refer you to the bottom of page 3.
Bottom of page 3.
The copy I have says 59.B.4. Do you believe that's not correct?
Okay, I see that. Okay, I would have to actually look at the rule to see if it's, I guess the error is B3 or B4, is that,
Well, let's just make a note that we have an issue there and go ahead and continue.
clarify that? Okay. Finding 2 regarding conditions beyond our reasonable control. GenOn has declared Unit 1 unavailable for service to investigate potential safety concerns and make necessary repairs, which is beyond our control. We don't want to operate an unsafe unit. Unit 1 is not available for startup or operation until all inspections and repairs are complete. The ammonia test cannot be performed when the unit is offline, and as I mentioned, it wasn't done earlier in the year because of only 7 hours of operation. Finding number 3 regarding closing of the business. Unit 1 is currently offline, and as mentioned again, has been declared unavailable for service till all the work's been completed. Therefore, the unit will also not release any excess emissions during the variance period while this work is being performed. Finding number 4 regarding curtailment. Curtailment is not necessary as the unit is offline. Finding number 5 regarding excess emissions. There will be no excess emissions during the inspection and repair period as the unit is unavailable, and for most of the remainder of the variance period, as Charles mentioned, the unit is not expected to operate and therefore will not produce excess emissions. When called to operate by CALISO, unit will operate in compliance with all applicable air quality regulations. Finding number 6 regarding monitoring and quantifying emissions. There will not be any emissions during the variance period as the unit is offline. The unit does have a NOx continuous emission monitor that monitors NOx and O2 24/7 whether the unit's operating or not. So the next time the unit does run, this emissions monitor will quantify and report our NOx emissions. Finding number 7 regarding nuisance. We expect no nuisance conditions to occur during the period of the variance. We are not aware that the district has received any complaints about the Ormond Beach facility in the past. Finding number 8 regarding public health or safety. When the unit is back in operation, it is not likely to create an immediate threat or hazard to public health or safety, because normal boiler operations do not pose such threats. And the facility is not located within 1,000 feet of a school or a health facility. That completes all my statements regarding the findings.
Could you, do you have finding 9 there in front of you?
Finding 9? No, I didn't have a... Okay. Oh, these are having to do with the increments of progress?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't address that, but the increments of progress specified in this order are reasonable.
We can address, if you're not prepared, we'll address that as we go along.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think those needed to be addressed.
Has the petitioner received a copy of the draft order that the board has?
Yes, we have.
Is there anything in there that concerns you, that you think is inaccurate?
No. Anything, Chuck?
Anything missing, in your opinion?
No, there's nothing missing.
No.
Okay. Members of the board have questions for the petitioner? Mr. Stubblefield?
May I call you Mike?
Yes,
Okay. There are 2 units, is that the whole facility, 2 units?
correct.
1 and 2?
There's
And
also 2 auxiliary boilers there, but they don't generate electricity. They provide
2 750 megawatt units, okay.
electrical generating units, right.
What's going to happen with Unit 2 during the next, if this board grants your petition request?
Unit 2 is unaffected by this. It's only for Unit 1. Unit 2 has undergone its inspection now, and repair is complete, and it's been returned to service.
I think maybe to get to
And
the
it's been
question
tested
too,
for NOx emissions?
the ammonia slip test was completed on August 1st, that's right.
The ammonia slip test for Unit 2 was completed this year.
Oh, okay. 'Cause
Yeah, this is for Unit 1 that only has operated.
I get that. It's
Right.
just that I saw it, and it got mentioned at first about Unit 1 and 2 and how they're used, and then there was no further mention of Unit 2, so I just wanted to verify for the record that,
Yeah, that was a description of the plant.
Yeah. Yeah, and Unit 2 is fully up to date on all its testing.
and it's up to date on it, it's had a
Ammonia slip
recent
test.
Yes.
emissions test.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I've got one more question. If you plan to have the repairs completed by November, is that?
Mid-November's our...
Then why do you need until next September for a source test and the other test, the ammonia test?
As mentioned, Mr. Stubb, we don't intentionally run the units. California ISO directs us when to run the unit. The unit was available all year basically until August when we declared the outage, and it ran only 7 hours. And that 7 hours is actually for us to do some test, test some equipment. So they haven't directed the unit to be run all year because of system demand, and we don't anticipate that.
So you can't just turn it on for the test? It has to come down from ISO?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
what does it take, like 18 hours to start up a unit like this?
It is an 18-hour startup to start the
Okay.
unit up. But, to be truthful with the thing is, we can start the unit, but we don't start the unit unless ISO directs us. Is it possible to start the unit?
Because it generates electricity,
That's
you might
right.
as well put it on the grid when it's needed.
Absolutely, that's
Got it,
correct.
okay.
Yep, yep.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board members? Mr. Murphy?
When you repair unit number 1, you mean you are not going to be running it to test it to see if it works prior to when you actually need it, maybe next summer?
That's a good question, Mr. Murphy. I think we had some issues on Unit 2, and we repaired those. And we thought, well, we're at it, since they're similar units built about the same time, we're going to go ahead and do an inspection on Unit 1 as well. And so Unit 1 ran fine. Last time it ran in March for 7 hours. But we decided it was appropriate to go ahead and do X-ray inspections and take a look at our equipment on Unit 1. So we're doing that. We've got a system laid out to inspect all the piping. It takes a long time to do that. That's why we're saying mid-November to finish it. Once we're done with those inspections, if we identify any repairs as a result of those X-rays, we'll make those repairs. At that point, we'll tell Cal ISO, hey, the unit's ready to run. Okay, but again, we'll be, when they tell us to run, we'll run.
So you're going to make all the repairs, but it may be after you make the repairs, months before you actually run it and find out if there's anything wrong with those repairs.
That's absolutely probably the case, Mr. Murphy, but one thing to keep in mind is it's piping that we're replacing. So we're replacing piping that is corroded with new pipes, so, you're really not going to find anything out bad anyway. But you're correct in that statement.
Yes. Then, when you were talking, it sounded like you had to run it for a certain amount of time before you would do the source testing type of thing. State that again for me, because I didn't, I heard it, but I didn't get it written down.
Can I take that, or?
It was just 7 hours. I'll talk about it. I think the answer to your question is we mentioned it ran for 7 hours and then we never actually injected ammonia. What has to happen is the boiler has to get up hot enough before ammonia is injected. There's a temperature that's actually 550 degrees. The boiler has to get to that point before you can inject ammonia to start knocking down emissions.
Okay. But when you get the word from on high that you can and should run this, you'll do that, and will you then at that particular time also be doing the testing for the NOx emissions?
We, the testing is done by a contractor.
Okay.
So when we find out the unit's going to run and it gets up online, we have to get a hold of a contractor and get on their schedule. Hopefully they're available. They're not standing by for us. They, test for a lot of people. And generally when they call for the units, it's when we're having a heat wave. And then there's, I think, a lot of people, a lot of other industrial sources that aren't running in the cooler months, and they also want contractors, I think, about the same time. So we'll make every effort to get it scheduled as soon as possible. But it could take several days, a week. And the unit has to stay on. A lot of times ISO calls for it, and it only stays on for 1 day, and then they turn it back off. It's not on the next day, and that's happened in previous years where we weren't able to get it scheduled right away. But we're going to make every effort. As soon as we know it's been called for, I'll start calling contractors and trying to get on the schedule. And then we have to also have it up online at a load and stuff. We just can't do it during the startup period or when they're not injecting ammonia. So it all has to be coordinated, and it takes time.
Okay. Assuming that we have then another cool summer like we had this last summer, you only were up 7 hours. What happens if that's the same thing? You get to September 30th of next year. What happens?
I'm thinking at some point that we would have to force the unit on to do it if it hasn't been called for by the September 30th, then we would actually make a request through ISO to run the unit.
Other
In
questions?
addition, that would give us scheduling time to schedule the contractor too, if it came to that.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Stubblefield?
Is this standard operating procedure of all the plants in California controlled by ISO, that if they make repairs on an infrequently used unit, they just let it sit until the next time they're directed to turn it on? And Mike, you said you're going to then contact a subcontractor to come in to do the testing? I mean, wouldn't you have to, can they do it on that short a notice? Aren't you going to be told like the day before to turn it on?
That's true, and that's why I'm saying it would be difficult to schedule it right away. I think we have some wording in the variance order that says that we will get it done for sure if the unit's on for 15 continuous days. I think that's what's in there. We will make every effort to do it before then. If it's on 3 or 4 days, there's a good opportunity I could be able to get a contractor and get the testing scheduled. But if it's just 1 or 2 days and back off, we probably won't get it scheduled that quick.
It seems, not to be argumentative, but it just seems to me that, I mean, we all know, those of us, especially members of this board, know that the best time to emit emissions is in the winter, not the summer. And yet, it sounds like it's highly unlikely that ISO will direct you to turn on unit number 1 during the winter. Am I correct?
I think that's, you're correct.
It'll be in the
I think,
summer when when everybody has their air conditioning on in Riverside and San Bernardino counties.
Correct. It's system demand, right? So the system demand is going to decide which units they call on. How, and these 2 units at Ormond Beach are rather large units, megawatt-wise. The startup time is longer. So, the system demand's got to be pretty high before they call on these 2 units to run.
So I'm at a loss to understand why you would, I mean, this is obviously a very complex facility.
Correct.
It would seem to me that you'd want to make sure that the fixes were 100% done and that everything's functional before you're directed by ISO to turn it on. I mean, that's the way complex machinery is usually tested after it's repaired, even if you shut it down immediately after that.
Right.
So what is the rationale for waiting until they need it when you don't know for sure whether it's going to be able to do its job or not?
Well, like I was trying to mention to Mr. Murphy a few minutes ago, it's kind of the same question, I think. Maybe I didn't answer very well. One of the things, what we're doing is we're inspecting piping systems, nothing electrical or rotating. We're inspecting piping systems, and we're concerned about the wall thicknesses on our steam pipes. And so when we can x-ray a steam pipe, and if that pipe's below a standard that we have, we cut it out the pipe and replace the pipe. Okay? And then the pipe gets x-rayed again, and the welds get x-rayed, so we know it's going to function. Okay, you got a brand new piece of pipe in there. Now, if we were replacing an engine or a motor or something like that, it would make sense to test it. But in this case, there's tests you can do offline, x-rays, et cetera, on the welds, on the pipes to verify that they're functional.
Could you not ask ISO, hey, we're done with the repairs, we'd like to test this thing. Why don't you authorize us to turn it on for 24 hours? You said it takes 18 to get everything up and running.
To full temperature, that's correct. Yeah.
That plus however long the test takes, and then turn it off.
Yes, we could ask ISO to do that. We could ask them to schedule that unit, yes. It's a little more involved than that, but that's not impossible. True.
Thank you.
If you were to ask ISO of it, what's the expense of running a whole number 1 plant for 18 hours at least?
You're asking for a dollar figure?
Approximation.
It's large. It's very large.
Give me an approximation. Large to me might mean $10.
Yeah, no, I hate to give you, probably to me too, but I hate to throw a number out and have you hold me to it, but my guess would
And I'm
be
not going to hold you to it.
easily several $100,000. Easily.
Also, if you look at in Section 6, conclusions and orders of the draft order,
What page?
A4, it's on my page 5, I think. Hopefully it's on their page 5. Says, conduct an ammonia test on a Ormond unit number 1 under one of these scenarios, giving the 3 scenarios. Would you mind if we inserted the words after scenarios, whichever occurs first?
I'm still looking.
Oh, no, I don't think that's a problem at all, Mr. Murphy. He's saying whichever occurs first here, number 4,
Page 5.
within 15
Oh,
days.
yeah.
Or by 7.
A4.
I think that's what's intent by that statement as it is, so that'd be fine, yeah.
Mr. Gasparino?
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. Several questions. Would it be fair to guess that the incident was the piping itself?
That's true on the other unit, yes.
Okay, on Unit 2,
Yeah.
correct. So you're assuming that's why you're doing the x-raying of the piping systems for Unit 1, et cetera?
That's correct. We're just
Okay.
making sure, yeah.
Have you ever used Unit 1 instead of Unit 2? Right now, you're using Unit 2, which is your rationale for not shooting up Unit 1. I mean, once you know that you think and believe Unit 1 is operational, does ISO really say, hey, we need you to shut Unit 1 up and running, or can you make the decision whether it's Unit 1 or Unit 2?
You know, I'm not sure to answer your question. I believe we have a choice.
Okay. And they're both the same capacity, correct?
Roughly.
Right.
Right.
And so which of the two units has been in operation a lot longer in terms of age?
Unit 1's a little bit older.
It's a little bit older.
About a year and a
But
half.
has it been used as much as Unit 2?
Recently, no. Go ahead, you know.
No, I think they're pretty similar. They both have been operated a lot less in the last few years where they're hardly running now. Unit 1 was kind of the extreme this year where it just had the 7 hours and never did come online. Unit 2, I think, probably ran maybe a week all year, not too much more than that.
Okay, but I guess where I'm going, and the question really is that when you only need one unit, has it always been Unit 2?
I think that has to do with efficiency of the units,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure which is more efficient. ISO will dispatch the more efficient of the two
Yeah.
units. I know they do that at our other plants, and I've in fact asked for a certain unit to be, I heard they were going to be starting up one of the units, I requested through the plant if they could start the other one instead.
Yeah,
It
okay.
needed a test, and it was denied.
Right, okay,
by-
so they're
by
the
ISO.
controlling arm on this whole
Yes.
thing then? Because I was going to say the option is really in your hands, but now you've clarified that it's not.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I've actually gone through that where it was denied.
Okay, and then the other two questions I had actually have been somewhat answered, but I would like for staff to take note. One of the questions I have is relates to the permit condition and the actual sampling of Unit 1, and whether or not the conditions of permit require sampling regardless of whether the unit is operating more than 24 hours, less than 24 hours, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like some clarification on that, so, but thank you very much.
You said it would cost, I mean, I'm not holding you to, it's just a ballpark figure, but you said several $100,000 perhaps. But you do get paid for the electricity that you generate once it's up and running?
We do get paid for electricity we generate when Cal ISO directs us to run.
Pardon me?
When California ISO directs us to run, we do get paid. If they direct us to run the unit.
Can you actually fire it up, turn it on, and not generate electricity, or does it generate electricity as a...
We can fire it up and turn it on and never generate electricity, but we don't get very much heat and load on it, enough to, to do an actual test of our emissions test. We need to, have a load on the unit to conduct the testing.
It would never get a high enough temperature where you could inject the ammonia into the SCR catalyst. Like he mentioned, it needs to be 550, and just without having any load and more fuel, you won't reach that temperature. And you don't inject ammonia, you can't do an ammonia test.
Well, if you were authorized by ISO to start it up, maybe turn the other one off, as Mr. Gasparino suggested, so that you could test it, you'd get paid for the electricity, right? So while it costs hundreds of thousands to turn it back on, you would make hundreds of thousands, or would it be a break-even deal while it's on and being tested and generating electricity all at the same time?
Yeah, I think to answer your question, maybe to clear it up, if they direct us to run the unit and deliver certain load at certain hours, we do get paid for that, as long as we deliver that load. And now if we're doing that, in conjunction with that, and any testing is due and we know that's coming, we go ahead and schedule and conduct the testing whenever we can. And that's the way we've always done it in the past. What happened this year is the units have run so very, very little because of the weather, very little. In fact, Unit 2, the other unit, has run very little. And of course, we mentioned Unit 1's only had 7 hours of operation the entire year, just because of the system demand.
So is this partly just a business decision to not, because if you're directed to turn it on, you save money?
I think there's some business decision to it. Surely
Thank
there
you.
is. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I have some Somebody has some other questions?
Actually, it was a question, but, and it's not meant to be facetious. You know, I've made a conscious decision, being an environmental engineer, to cut back on electricity consumption, and I've noticed my bill still is going up. And I don't want to be told someplace down the road, like with water utilities, that it's the infrastructure that's crumbling. It sounds like you are maintaining the infrastructure. Just the kind of question is, you know, you're doing what needs to be done based upon the state directing you to do certain things, and it comes down to efficiency, and it comes down to return on investment. Why are utility rates still going up?
That's an excellent question, because I'm paying the same bill you are.
All right.
I don't like it either.
I have a few more questions. What's in the order is somewhat different than what's in your petition. In the petition, you stated the ammonia source test will be scheduled when the unit becomes available for generation. That's under the petition, section 8.3. I think you said the same thing. Do you have a copy of your petition handy?
Not the order or initial petition?
The initial petition.
And your question then?
Well, my question is, in sections 8.3 and B.4 on, it says the ammonia source test will be scheduled when the unit becomes available for generation. Are you finding that, or you want me to refer you to it? On the petition, page 5.
Oh, I'm looking on our petition. It's A3. The ammonia source test will be scheduled when the unit becomes available for generation.
Right. And on another page, the next page under B4, you say the same thing.
Okay.
That doesn't seem to be what you're asking for at this point. Am I not understanding?
Well, I guess it was laid out in more detail in the final findings in the order. I think initially, you know, these were just, we are still going to try and do it as soon as we can, whenever the unit's available. That is one of our conditions in there, that we will try and make every effort to do it. If we can get the contractor, the unit stays on and everything.
So it becomes available for generation means not only available and ready to go, but you're being directed to run it.
Okay, then
Is
I
that-
think that's probably just an inaccurate statement. What we really meant to probably say is when the unit becomes operational, again, not available.
Okay.
Because it'll become available whenever the repairs are complete.
That's
But I think the intent-
basically my question.
Right, I think the intent is when it becomes operational and they actually call for it to run.
Would it be, you talk about following a safety incident on Unit 2, and Mr. Gasparino asked you a little bit about that. It may not be the subject of this hearing, but I'd like to hear a little more about it if possible.
Sure, Mr. Harlock. Basically, we had a small steam line on August 1st on Unit 2 fail. As a result of that steam line failure, we thought it was appropriate to take a look at all high-pressure steam lines, and so we declared both units unavailable at that point. And we started with Unit 2 first. We did a thorough inspection of all the Unit 2 steam lines, found some repairs that we have a safety margin built into those lines. If we were anywhere near that safety margin, we elected to go ahead and replace those pipes. That's done on Unit 2. Once we were complete with Unit 2, we decided to move on to Unit 1. But we had committed, the organization had committed not to run that unit again until we felt it was safe, absolutely safe to do so. And so that's what we're doing right now in Unit 1.
When did you do the source test on Unit 2?
On August 1st.
That's when you had the problem?
That's right. So we were just finishing up, and then we had the problem.
Okay, I think I understand one of my other questions on page 3 in the draft order at the top. You say, therefore, GenOn is seeking a regular variance in the statement, I've got it marked 1, to delay ammonia testing on Ormond Unit 1 until September 30th, 2012. A compliance test will be conducted as soon as practicable after the maintenance has been completed and Ormond Unit 1 has resumed normal operation, and you're predicting that's not going to be until September. Is that?
It's possible that the way historically the last couple of years, that's when it could be the next time it's actually called for. But if it's called for sooner, we'll try to get it done sooner.
Okay. You're under findings 2. We need to find that you did the best you could to avoid this situation. Can you give us some testimony or other evidence that the problems that you encountered on August 1st were unforeseeable and did not result due to maintenance records not being? I'd like to hear that you did the best to prevent that happening to begin with.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Herlock, I think to answer your question, if I understand it correctly, when we had the small line fail on August 1st on the unit number 2, it was our full intention at that point. Both units were available. We were directed to run Unit 2 that day. Actually, we had to run Unit 2 to conduct the emissions testing, and that's why we were doing it, plus Cal ISO wanted the unit. We had full intentions at that point to do the same thing with Unit 1 within the next couple of months by the end of the due date, assuming the unit would have got scheduled to run. When the small steam line failed on August 1st, that was a complete surprise to us. And the truth is that nothing happened on Unit 1. It was still ready to go as far as we're concerned. But from a safety perspective, the company takes personnel safety very seriously. From a safety perspective, we thought it appropriate to declare the unit unavailable until we could do a thorough inspection on both those units. It's a pretty big job to do that. We started with Unit 2 first, and then now we're working on, and that's done, and we're working on Unit 1 right now. Nothing happened on Unit 1 per se that would have stopped us from running the unit other than just good judgment from a safety perspective. So let's take a look and make sure.
That really wasn't my question.
Okay, I was afraid of that.
Yeah, my question is that I would like for you to convince me that inspection and maintenance, which might have caught the steam line problems, were done as required and showed no problems.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that question. I can tell you that we have a solid maintenance program at the station. The station is 40 years old. We have a solid maintenance and preventative maintenance program at the station. Inspections are done. We have a high energy piping system inspection program that was in full force. But some of the smaller lines, this is totally unforeseen. And as a result, we've taken on the entire program to inspect all those lines. So a lot of the maintenance and PM programs are in place, are in good standing. But this was a lesson learned for us, and that's why we're making sure it was a one-off event.
Can you state that there weren't any maintenance tests or inspections that were not conducted, that should have been conducted, that were in your program?
I really can't think of any, Mr. Herlock, something that is not done as far as maintenance.
No, I'm not asking you to make things up. I'm saying, can you state that everything that was called for was done?
If you're talking about you're not talking about emissions and stuff, you're talking about just general plant maintenance.
Maintenance, yes.
Yeah, I believe that everything was done, Mr. Herlock, as far as general plant maintenance. Like I said, there's hundreds of pieces of equipment at the plant. There are many, many, many maintenance programs and PM programs. to say 1 or 2 PMs got missed here or there is certainly a possibility. But as far as this event, I think it was pretty much unforeseen.
So this, you're asserting that this was definitely beyond your control and was not a result of, you know, missing something or neglect?
You know, again, to answer your question, Mr. Hark, I'm not really sure how to answer that because I can tell you I've been at the station for a few months. When I got there, I saw rust and stuff like that. But until you go actually do some X-raying on pipes and stuff, you don't know the consequences of that rust and stuff. The facility does sit on the ocean, and so it's tough for me to answer that question, factually.
All right, thank you. Is this unit in the category of a peaker unit?
It would be considered a peaker the way it is now. You can go back years ago, and it would have been a base-loaded unit. Back when Edison owned it, you go back into the 80s and 90s, it used to run full load all the time. But now you would consider it a peaker unit, that's correct.
I don't know how you interpret a peaker, but usually they're like gas turbines. They can start them up in 20 minutes and be online and run them for 5 or 6 hours and shut it. It's not a peaker if that's what you're thinking about.
18 hours is not a peaker unit.
No. Maybe the way they try to operate it, and it,
Yeah.
just get it up and run it for a few hours and shut it back down. But as what I think you're used to thinking of as a peaker, it's not.
Any other board member questions for the petitioner, Mr. Stubblefield?
Does Unit 2 run all the time, or does ISO direct you to turn it off sometimes, take it offline?
Actually, to answer your question, ISO directs that one. In fact, we ran yesterday, and ISO directed the startup time and the takeoff time.
So the next time ISO directs you to turn it off and then tells you to turn it back on, why would ISO care whether you turn on Unit 1 or Unit 2? They both generate 750 megawatts of electricity.
Yeah, but that's true, but there are some efficiency issues there, and one of the things that the plant burns natural gas, they're paying for the gas, so they could direct that. The other thing is too, with schedules, outages are scheduled, planned outage maintenance periods are scheduled, so they'll know which unit's available. Right now, this week, Sunday, we ran Unit 2, and they did that because they see Unit 1's in a forced outage for inspections, and an outage so they know only Unit 2's available.
And it's already back off. It's still not on. I mean, you just ran it that one day.
So right now, that plant's not generating anything?
No.
That's correct.
No.
Yeah, it generated very little all year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Does district staff have any questions for the petitioner?
I just wanted to clarify that it was a Rule 29C violation, and that there is as a part of their Title V permit, there's an attachment, it's attachment 59 in want, which is based on Rule 59. So it's actually, what we're asking for is a variance from this permit condition 29C. So I don't really have any other.
And that can be fixed up in the final, the final order. Yeah. Do board members have any questions of the district?
Can I get a response on my question, please? Regarding conditions of the permit with regards to the actual testing requirements?
Doesn't have any exclusion for how it operates.
Would you repeat, maybe if you could repeat that, I want to
Well, yeah, I
make sure
guess
that I understand the question.
not having the sampling conditions as part of the permit in front of me to review, there is a requirement to test and to ensure that with the ammonia injection, the NOx are not going to be exceeded, okay, the loading factor. But does the permit require testing regardless of whether or not the unit's ever operated during, let's say, a 12-month cycle?
The only thing that the permit says is that it must be tested every 12 months. It does not require that they turn the units on just just to test them. If that's what your question is.
Well, in order to test them, they have to operate, and they have to get up to 500-plus degrees Fahrenheit in order to inject the ammonia, as I understand it correctly. So therefore, Unit 1 will have to be up and operating regardless of whether ISO requires it or not within the 12-month period in order to comply with the sampling requirements of the permit, correct?
When you say the sampling requirements, I'm trying to find sampling. Are you referring to a specific condition?
Well, the testing to ensure that they're within the load requirements for the, what was it, for the NOx? Yeah, the source testing or whatever.
Well, the test that they need to perform is they need to test for the ammonia slip, and I'm looking at permit attachment 59N1, condition 3, and that requires that they test it every 12 months. It says shall be determined by source testing for ammonia not less than once every 12 months. And so I guess this doesn't tell them that they have to turn it on to test it, but obviously if they don't test it after 12 months, then they are in violation of this. And I think we believe that for us to have them turn on this huge unit just to do the test when they could test it, maybe 8 or 9 months from now, I didn't really see that as a real major problem. I thought that for us to ask them to fire up something that big would probably cause a lot more emissions than we're trying to save, I guess. So I guess that was where our thinking was.
Okay, well, again, it gets back to some of the other board members' line of questioning is whether or not they could opt to have Unit 1 up and running instead of Unit 2, so for purposes of complying with the conditions of the permit to test for ammonia. That's where I was coming from, so thank you.
Well, it doesn't sound like they have the option to run the one they want to, though. So I guess if they have the option to run the one that needs to be tested, then they certainly should.
One thing that we also discussed was that they would have the option to apply for a permit condition that would allow them to test when it operates, so that if they run into this next year where it doesn't operate at all, then they would have the testing tied to the hours that they actually operate.
Thank you very much.
So I don't know, that's up to them to pursue. So,
Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, and that's where I think Mr. Gasparic was going, but it just seems to me as if you only have it working 7 hours during the previous year, that it doesn't need probably another source test during that. It would seem like if you could, in their permit operation, that there would be a time that rather than dates that are run, you would have, if they could have their permit modification requests, that after so many hours of running, however many that would be to satisfy the district, then they would have to do a source test.
Yeah, I would imagine that this permit condition was probably put in here when they were operating quite a bit. So then it made a lot more sense than it does now. It would definitely be an idea for them to see if they can modify this, and rather than have it every 12 months, if it doesn't run, have it be so many hours a year. If it runs over so many hours, then you need to test it. That would certainly make a lot of sense to us.
We do plan to pursue that option also.
I have a question for the district. It seems to me that what this is all about is the petitioner isn't able or would prefer not to do a source test as soon as they're ready, which could be as early as November, and is asking this board to give them a pass on this year's source test. And I think the reason for that is that the permit is out of line with reality. And I think we've been talking about that now with the petitioner and with you for some time, and my impression is that asking the board to solve that problem with a long-term variance is not the solution. And in fact, I don't even know that it's in the scope of the variance process or the board to solve that problem with a variance. I'm concerned about that. I'd like to hear from district on that, and if council has something to say, I'd like to hear that as well.
Well, I would think that they would want to modify that, and so that it made more sense for how they operate now. I don't have any authority to just change that. They're going to have to submit an application to do that, and I don't think that would be a major problem to get that change. I just think that it would be a matter of submitting the application to get it to more accurately reflect how they run the plant now.
I understand that. What I'm saying is I think what the board is being asked to do is not appropriate. That this variance is, the board is being asked to give them a pass on this year's variance test for reasons that may be reasonable, but I don't think fit the variance process and definitions. Like some comments, discussion on that.
Mr. Chair, before we go off on that, and it sounds like we've started already, I don't know that I agree with your statement, but I would really like to hear from council before anybody else comments.
Okay, the criterion is that you can grant up to a year. You have to make the findings for those, and part of those findings are an analysis of the economies that are involved and the hardship and burden and the fault and the danger of excess emissions. As long as all the findings are satisfied for that period, you can grant up to that 1 year period. You can even grant beyond that if increments of progress are put in place. I think the original design for that was where it wasn't feasible to fix it before then. You can tailor the conditions in the order so that they have to proceed to the amendment by such and such a date to change the condition or do the test by then. And if it's just a matter of whether they are hit with the economic burden next September or earlier, it makes no difference really. They're going to be hit with that. You could streamline or more restrict the conditions so that as soon as they can get permission from CAISO to run Unit 1, they should, and then do the test. And perhaps they could even make a concession on their rates they charge for that so that the burden is borne by them and not CAISO for the extra cost. But that's all within your discretion. But as long as you can make the findings, you can grant up to the full year.
So to make those findings, let's say the finding 9, increments of progress specified are reasonable and are as expeditious as practicable, then we use our judgment that that's an economic decision.
Let me comment on that. That's an implicit finding that actually is made by CalArb. What you're doing there is protecting your order, because CalArb can revoke it or recondition it if they find you haven't done that. It's not really a condition you have to satisfy, a finding you have to make. It's from Health and Safety Code Section 42362 that says the State Board may revoke or modify any variance granted by any district if in its judgment the variance does not require compliance within the required schedule of increments of progress or emission standards as expeditiously as practicable, or the variance does not meet the requirements of this article. So you would be anticipating how they would view what you did when you make that finding, and that's why it's called an implicit finding. You're really trying to safeguard your order there. It's not like you have an affirmative duty to do that. CalArb is supposed to review and see if you did it. And it's optional to them. It's in their discretion as to whether they change the order or not.
Other discussion by board members on this topic? Mr. Stubblefield?
Well, I thank the petitioners for your comments. I mean, I think they've made their case, but I think the larger issue here is that we have these two regulatory bodies. The Air Pollution Control District of Ventura County has a big fat book like this with all the rules about who can emit how much stuff under what conditions, and what the fines are, and what the punishments are for not doing so, and so forth. But then we have Cal ISO, which doesn't really coordinate with us, and I assume with other APCD, other air pollution control districts all over the state. And it seems to me that there ought to be some communication there, some coordination, so that this kind of thing wouldn't happen. It seems like, I mean, because these facilities are probably labor intensive occasionally. They require inspections and repairs. I don't think any harm's going to be done by them waiting a year if the thing isn't even going to be running. It's certainly not going to emit anything. But it seems kind of like a Band-Aid on a badly conceived system. It seems like we could do this better. So perhaps staff, could contact Cal ISO and say, what do you guys do in a situation like this? Because they're just apparently telling, I assume they treat everybody the same. They just look at your power plants and your efficiency, you said. That's the only criteria I've heard so far. And then they say turn it on or turn it off. Without any recognition of the reality of the situation that an aging plant like this that's 40 plus years old does require some maintenance occasionally. I'm looking at this as a car guy. I'm thinking it's like giving the customer his or her car back without doing a road test on it and say, I fixed it, don't worry about it, it'll run fine. Only this is a far more complex device than a car.
Mr. Hurlock, if I could address that?
Yes.
I would just say, Mr. Stubblefield, that, I think I mentioned to Mr. Hurlock, back on August 1st, before we took the outage on the unit for the inspections, we fully intended to coordinate with Cal ISO, get a schedule to run the unit so we could conduct the testing on Unit 1. Once we had the safety concerns, we declared the outage, and so that's why it hasn't happened. We would have worked with Cal ISO to get a schedule in the next couple of months so that we could have got the testing done. But because we had to take it out for safety concerns, we didn't get to do that.
I'm not blaming you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you...
I'm blaming Cal ISO.
Let me follow up on that. If you were planning to do it then, why are you saying now would rather not do it?
That's a good question. Actually, in August and September, system demand is going to be a lot higher, Mr. Hurlock, than it will be come December, January, February, whatever we're looking at. It would have been, easily worked out with them, I think, to conduct a test. And that's what, in fact, on the August 1st run for Unit 2, that's when we did it, and that's how we did it. We scheduled it a couple weeks in advance with them, high demand area, and we worked that out. Typically, these are done in the summer. They have been. Doesn't have to be, but that's the way they are.
Would you be would you have difficulty, or would you be able to decide within your local unit that it was acceptable to condition this variance on your expeditiously getting this permit change application to the district? You're talking about a permit, changing the permit, applying for a change in the permit as described in, I believe it's described in the draft order here.
I don't see how we could get a permit change so quickly as to help us with Unit 1 this year. I could see that being something for next year, but we're already end of October.
What would you consider to be expeditious in that process?
I'd like to...
From you submitting the application, never mind there.
I don't know really how long the permit process. I'm not usually involved with that. We had a regulatory person, I think they worked with Chris and Keith Duvall before, and I'm not sure what the process is. and how long it takes, but I don't think could it be that quickly before the end of this year, Chris?
I'm not asking for the end of the year, I'm just asking for an estimate. If the district wants to,
I'm not involved with the permit process, but I know it can take several months to reissue a permit, and plus it's a Title V facility, so there may be an extra layer of review by EPA during the process. So it wouldn't happen by January 1st, but within the next calendar, or within the next 12 months, I'm thinking it probably could be revised.
you think it would be reasonable to include it within the term of this September 2012 period?
I would say it'd be reasonable to include the application, but not necessarily the issuance of a revised permit, because that would, we don't have any control over how long it would take to go through the permit process.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Yeah. I'm going to step in here because I think we're getting a little bit, I'm worried about doing things here that are stretching the boundaries of our jurisdiction, if not going over them, that to address the first things with who you have to coordinate with. You know, it's not there to address Mr. Stubblefield's issues here. It's not their responsibility. They don't have, this upper body doesn't have the permit requirement that GenOn is the one with the permit, and GenOn is the one that needs to work with them in order to say, hey, you guys, we have this permit, please work with us. That's the burden is on them. We get variances, or we don't get variances when we get a petition on it, and telling somebody, well, you've got to go as a condition of us giving you a variance, you've got to seek different permits, etc. I don't think that that's within our jurisdiction either. That's totally a choice of theirs. We make the findings, we make the increments of progress to whether or not they'll be in violation, but we can't say, oh, change your permit. We can advise them, as Mr. Gasparro said, that he thinks that's a real good idea that they do that. And I think the problem in the situation has been, we did have permit conditions that, if they, in retrospect, could be written differently so that they would work better. So it makes sense now to seek a change of that now that we're aware of those things. But I am comfortable in giving the requests that are in with the minor variations we've talked to here in the draft order, and let it be up to the petitioner here to do what we've kind of all agreed is a logical thing, get the permit changed, because we really are spending a lot of time here. It's a situation where we're not going to have any or minuscule, if any, pollution requirements, and that's what we should be pollution problems, and that's what we should be interested in.
Any other questions or comments? Did you?
Yes, I'm prepared to make a motion.
I think we want to take public comment.
Does Maple Leaf want to comment?
But any members of the public wish to speak on this petition? I'll close the hearing then. Any discussion among board members? More than we've already had?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the petition on Gen West LP for regular variance.
with the change in the corrections
Oh,
that we've done.
yeah, with the comments and the noted corrections that were identified early when the petitioner was stating the findings. That's correct.
I'll second that motion.
We have a second and a motion. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Gasparini?
Aye.
Mr. Stubblefield?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Sheriff Hurlock?
Yes. Your petition is accepted and the order is granted as modified.
Thank you very much. Enjoy talking to you guys.
The second item on this evening's agenda is petition number 841, petition of Maple Leaf Bakery for a short variance from District Rule 29C, conditions on permits, violation of permit to operate number 0473. These representatives were the ones who were sworn in, is that correct?
Yes, they are.
Will the petition representatives introduce yourselves and present your petition, please?
Hi, my name is Mike Casey. I'm the plant manager at Maple Leaf Bakery located in 2701.
Could you turn on your microphone, please?
Hi, my name is Mike Casey. I'm the plant manager located for Maple Leaf Bakery located at 2701 Statham Boulevard. We're applying for a short-term variance regarding 29C, the condition of permit. The facility itself, just a bit of history. Our permit was based on a 6-day operation running 20 hours a day based on 4 baking lines. Over the last 12 months, we've been running the 4 lines 16 hours a day, 5 days a week. So.
My name is Larry Bernor. I'm the maintenance manager at the bakery facility.
Would you repeat that, please?
Yeah, my name is Larry Bernor.
Could you present your case to us, to the board, please? What you're asking for?
If you want, Larry, maybe I could.
Yeah.
Okay. My name's Carolyn Casvan, and I'm with Casvan Consulting. I'm a technical consultant to Maple Leaf. I was just called in recently on this, but I will try and do my best to go through this for you.
Could you, excuse me, could you spell your name since it's not in the draft order?
Oh, it's Carolyn, C-A-R-O-L-Y-N, Casavan, C-A-S-A-V-A-N, and my company is Casvan Consulting.
Thank you.
Okay. So the Maple Leaf did a source test in June, their standard annual source test in June, and found that they were out of compliance with their ROC emissions. They conducted a number of corrective actions. They took, had the oxidizer manufacturer come in and take a look at the oxidizer. They fixed some leaking tubes in the heat exchangers, and they conducted additional source testing, and their most recent source test showed an emissions of 1.41 pounds per hour. Their emissions limit, according to their permit, is 1.31 pounds per hour. So they're asking for a short-term variance while they continue to look at additional measures they might be able to take to reach the 1.31 pounds per hour, which is their permitted limit. And the variance, I think, at this point is through January 10th, 2012. And I just would like to say that, as Mike was explaining, their production for the year is down from what their permit is based on. So their actual, at 1.41 pounds per hour, and their current production rates, they would be well under the annual emissions that were calculated for the permit.
I don't understand what you just said.
Okay, so they're permitted for, the permit is for 1.31 pounds per hour on the oxidizer, the ROC emissions. The annual limit was calculated based on 6 days a week of operation, 20 hours a day. And that comes out to about 3.9 tons per year of emissions. At the current production rate and 1.41 pounds per hour, their emissions would work out to about 2.82 tons per year. So although the hourly rate is slightly above what they're permitted, they are, because their production is lower than their permitted production, they will actually be under their annual permitted emissions.
Okay, thank you. Has the petitioner received a copy of the draft order? Do you have anything that you'd like to say as far as there being inaccuracies in the draft order, or anything that you think is of concern to you or that should be added? Is everything in it accurate?
Everything appears to be accurate. When we were notified that the tests failed, from that point on, we've done numerous activities to try and get us back to being in compliance. We've done what we call, I guess, a bag test that is done, kind of an indicator. Even at that time, we did further inspections. We've done 2 of those tests over the last month. And we're at the point now, even just recently, last weekend, we did a number of repairs to the ducting and the dampers. We're prepared now to do another bag test. We believe that will pass, and we're going to schedule the final test. We're almost at that point now. We believe we will be in compliance. So.
Board members have questions for the petitioner? Mr. Murphy?
It was installed in 1998.
And how often do you do your source?
We're set up to annually do it in June. Last year, I believe that got skewed a little bit because we actually did the test was done in September 28th of 2010 with the addition of a new oven that we put in. That's why even when we came back up on June, I was under the impression that we would have went through the normal cycle. And since we had just done it in September, we didn't realize our cycle was actually in June. And with the results that we got back in June, I was really somewhat surprised that it was actually showing that we weren't in compliance.
In the, on page 2, paragraph 3rd from the bottom of the order, that says that the source test was on June 29th, and on September the 12th, the district reviewed the test results. Do you know why there was that large gap between when you did the test and when the test results were reviewed?
Yeah, what had happened is the company that we use a company called Aerex that does the source testing for us. And for some reason, I'm not sure if the lab that they actually send the test in was actually changed ownership or what happened, but the test results were delayed. And I was not really sure why, but I think that's what happened on the other end of it. Something to do with the lab.
So therefore, the laboratory that you hired to do the testing didn't get the test results from June to the district before September.
Exactly. And as soon as we got them, then they did notify the air board, and they notified me that we were out of compliance. And at that point, we started making plan for corrective actions on it.
I would assume that your subcontractor gives you the results as well as the district. Would that be correct?
Yes, I got a phone call from Aerex when that.
I'm just wondering on the delay, were you looking for those test results prior to September?
Actually, when we did the test, I was under the impression that everything was okay, but I didn't realize that it was the normal procedure for the test is a couple weeks out. And even with the, we're doing a fast check or a speed engineering test on the oxidizer to check our progress. And even those results now they take about a week to get back. And we get them back sooner because they don't have to go through the documenting process and stuff that actually that they can submit to the board that they would accept.
What was the reason that you thought it was okay when they did it in June? Just because you didn't suspect anything wrong?
Didn't suspect anything wrong, and just talking to the people that were doing the test, they said everything looked like it was operating properly.
I noticed that you're talking about 1,500 tubes in the heat exchanger, and there were 21 of these that were leaking. Is this are the tubes something that give out on a regular basis, or is this something unusual that you would find 21 tubes that were leaking, or is that normal, abnormal? What's that?
This is the first time of my knowledge that we've actually had to do any repairs to the tubes on the heat exchanger. And this came after we were searching for things that we were trying to find out what was going on with it. When did the normal routine maintenance, and this is one of the things that came up with it.
When you talk about routine maintenance, that is there, you bought this in '98, I think you said, then, so therefore for the last 13 years, do you have somebody that comes in and does maintenance on,
we have
on a regular basis?
We have the manufacturer come out from Angle, or they'll hire a subcontractor that will come out. And routinely what we do, we usually purchase catalyst for it and do a routine swap out of the catalyst, which is, I don't know if you're aware of it, are fairly expensive, but we change those out. There are 12 pieces of catalyst in the main part of it, and we replaced anywhere from 4 to 8 pieces of that out, usually on an annual basis, just because we anticipate the depletion of the catalyst itself. Part of our process actually contaminates some of that, so we anticipate that, we budget it in every year, and we do that as part of the maintenance for it.
When the test results came back, even though that whoever was doing the testing was thinking that they would be fine, it was kind of multiple 5 out of compliance, a lot out of compliance. What particular portions of this, is the catalyst, the tubes, why was it so much out of compliance?
It was I believe it was a combination of multiple things, but it seemed like the biggest culprit of that threw us that far out of compliance was actually the holes in the heat exchanger.
Holes in the what?
The tubes on the heat exchanger that required to be repaired. And what that was doing, it was just letting just the emissions just go directly through it and bypass the catalyst. So the catalysts weren't able to actually break down the emissions.
But on your, kind of all these tubes gave out at once, because you do this every year and you've been in compliance every year, and all of a sudden 21 of them are blow out. Any kind of explanation of why normal maintenance wouldn't have been repairing these, or was it just a catastrophic event?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, that we did a test on September 28th in 2010, and we passed without any problems at that point. So this just within a 9-month period, we ended up having issues with it, and we have never had any problems with it before. So was somewhat surprised that we were having the issues with them. We did go through though and check, since we did notice we had those and we were repairing them. We did actually leak check all the 1,500 tubes in it while we had it down to do a thorough inspection of that.
And had there, since 1998, this was the first time there'd been any tube replacement?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware of, this is the first time we've ever had to do any tube repairs on it.
Okay. How many employees do you have at this plant?
There's a total of 178 in total.
And what's your production amount?
Currently today we have 4 lines. Are you asking for pounds or cases?
However you could explain it to me is that I would have an idea in my, how many trucks you ship out or whatever you can tell me.
So we have 4 lines a day that run 16 hours a day, 5 days a week. We're shipping approximately 4 to 5 truckloads a day out of the facility. We only sell frozen product. Some of the product is sold locally through some of our customers. Some of it is shipped across the country, right across North America, to some of our customers as well. We have a few of our lines are unique in the business. There is no other supply within our network. We do have 2 lines that we have similar equipment at some of our sister facilities across the country. So there is a lot of, I would say we support the West to a certain degree. We ship from the Mississippi border west. Generally, that's our rule of thumb. But
explain to me what is unique, what's the same.
Okay, so the 2 unique lines we have, so we have 2 lines that make anywhere from a bread roll to a baguette stick. In other words, those are very common lines. They're called Mechatherm lines. They're French technology. We have 2 lines that are Hearth lines. So those are lines that we supply. We could make anything from a boule, for example, to a 48-ounce loaf of bread that's sliced and bagged and sold at a retailer. You might find our product at Ralph's, Vaughn's. You'll see our product. You won't see our name, but you'll see our product. So if you go, you'll see California Gold Miner. So those items that I'm describing, none of our facilities can make that. So that's part of the uniqueness in itself. We have a sister plant on our fresh network in Canada that has some common equipment, but does make a different product. So even if we tried to source it out, they couldn't do the same product, so we'd have a concern with our local customers. Right?
If I was following, and I may not have caught it all, but about 2 lines make kind of the same products as others, and 2 lines make unique products.
Exactly.
So half of your production is unique.
Yes.
And if we would say, well, we want you to cut down to the bare minimum, you could probably get other plants to make what 2 of your production lines did, but 2 of them you'd just, in order to keep going, you'd have to.
At this time of the year, we wouldn't be able to do that because this is our peak selling period. From basically the middle of August right till the end of the year, all of our plants are running full blast.
Okay, so you couldn't ship it to some other plant. Okay.
So in the beginning of the year, usually from January till about April is our dull time, I guess as you call it. So there's a lot of excess capacity, but not at this time of the year.
did the lab that told you you were emitting 6.67 pounds per hour, the same lab that told you that you're now down to 1.41 pounds per hour?
Yes, that's correct.
And they're shipping their results off more quickly to the district?
Yeah, they've definitely figured out their issue on the other end of it, so, and with the daily calls to try to find out more information on it. Once we got the tubes and the heat exchanger repaired, we dropped our emissions down immediately right down to 1.67. So it made a definite improvement when we did that, along with the catalyst and other items that we repaired. So since then, we've been actively working on other issues with it and bringing that down.
Look at the variance order. I assume that you've got the same one as we do, and therefore this would be on page 5, and it would be subparagraph, it'd be 6, and there's a calculation there, and it shows how the excess emissions would be calculated, and they use in there the source test ROC emission rate. I'm wondering, and they're trying to put in there a number so that they could find the excess ROCs. What number is supposed to be in there? The 6.64 pounds per hour or the 1.41 pounds per hour? What number is in there?
The number that's supposed to be on there is 1.31.
No, this.
I think the number that you're looking for is the 1.41 pounds per hour, because that was the most recent test, and it was witnessed, I believe, by an APCD representative.
I have no further questions.
I have a couple of questions. We have the same page that Mr. Murphy just referred to on page 5. We have a loose end on this page that we need to take care of. I think we may have covered it, but under paragraph 4, item 4, the third paragraph down says Maple Leaf will discuss whether further curtailment at the Oxnard facility is possible at the hearing. I think I heard that basically can't do that at this time of the year.
I ask the same questions, I get the same answer. Right now, we can't do it, right? So we've actually, on one of our lines, even since that point, we've actually cut it down. We're only running 3 days a week when the volume is down. We've actually tried to do it on one of our lines. We were able to do that, just because the demand is a little bit soft locally, so we're able to do that.
Will you be able to continue that for the period of the requested variance through January?
Right now, I can't say for sure. I know when I look out the next 6 weeks, I have one of our lines that actually is reducing the number of shifts per week. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Thanksgiving usually is a peak period for us for selling, so we haven't hit that yet. So I would assume that the volume will go back and the lines will be running 16 hours a day. But over the next 3 weeks, I know that I do see a curtailment on one of the lines that we're running. It's only running 6 shifts a week versus the 10 that we normally plan for.
So if we that sentence that says something's going to happen here at the hearing, if we change that to say something like Maple Leaf will attempt to reduce production as much as possible during the period of the variance, that would...
That's a fair statement, yeah. Okay. Be okay with that.
And there's a sentence on page 6 under the conclusions and orders, and this may be a district issue, but I'll bring it up with you to begin with. On the first paragraph, it says conditions 2D and 3, I'm in line 3. for 4 bakery ovens to continue operating with minimal emission control. I mean, it's reduced emission control, isn't it? And minimal emission control sounds like we'd like to change that to minimal to reduced emission control from minimal, if you're okay with that and if the district is.
Yeah, that's fine with us.
Any other questions of the petitioner? Does the district staff have any questions of the petitioner? Oh, excuse me, Mr. Gasparino.
Yes, I have, actually, it's not so much a question as following the line of questioning early on about your preventive maintenance program. Reminds me of the old story of, it was called, I think it's called a lot of things about the rock theory, you know, solve the problem and you bring me a rock and it's not the right size, go back and bring me another one until you get it right, kind of a thing. And not to be too facetious, but it sounds like you're making corrective action and you see the numbers going down, so you keep going back and making changes. Okay? The concern I have is that once you achieve your limits, will you in fact have in place a program, and maybe you do, it sounds like it needs to be maybe monitored more closely, a program that allows you to do good preventive maintenance, and certainly with respect to any source testing, you know, the onus is really on you as the owner to track and identify where that report is and what the results are, not the district, and it's not the lab. The lab screws up, it's your responsibility. So I just would like to be encouraged that when you leave here, you go back and you really look carefully at your overall maintenance program and monitoring program. Thank you.
Yeah, the service that Angle does, or the manufacturer of the equipment, they have like an 81-point check when they come out and do the service on it. I have a copy of what they did the last time they were out. So it is fairly thorough as far as what they do, and we use them as an expert service for us, because we bake bread. We're not oxidized. I mean, I'm getting a training now just by getting the exposure we're doing right now, but you know, we use them as our experts actually to come out to do that. So it is fairly thorough though what they do. I can't say it's perfect. We've gone through and we've had another source come in and they've actually found items that they missed, but you know, without having the other source come back in, we wouldn't have come over and found some stuff. Last weekend we found some gaskets that were kind of misplaced. So, and that was after we already had the experts that we had come out to work on it and had the other guys come in and take a look at it. So,
District has any questions of the petitioner? Do board members have?
One point, there was a blank on page 4 of the district draft order in number 3, a dollar figure to be provided.
Oh, I missed that. There's 2 of them. Page 4?
Second paragraph on 3.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay, so the monthly fee, I can provide that. So on average, a monthly it's $2.9 million in revenue.
Yeah.
On a daily basis, it's $131,000.
So the first blank is?
Oh, the daily number, this is an average that I've taken, it's $131,000 a day.
That's first or second? Okay.
The first one.
Okay.
The second one, the average per month is $2.9 million.
The district staff got that? Okay. Thank you. Board members have any questions of district staff? There are no members of the public here, so, excuse me, Mr. Murphy.
One question on the, again, on page 5, paragraph 6. Do you agree that the source test ROC emission rate in that would be the most recent number they've come up with rather than the original number?
Yeah, I think it'll be a different number. I'm not sure what that number's going to be, and we won't know until we get to see the source test report. Typically, for this kind of testing, they'll take a bag sample, and that bag sample gets sent off to a lab where it's checked out, and then once we get those figures, we can use that. We did have a problem with the source test in that there are some dampers on the system that were leaking during the source test. And that was found by Stan Cowan, who works for us. He was out there on site, so he needs to make a decision as to whether he will accept those results or not.
What I'm wondering about is the reason for this paragraph 6 in the order, I would assume, is to figure out what their excess emissions has been over a period of time, not just from the date of this, or is it just from the date of this order forward? Which is it?
Yeah, we can only charge the excess emission fees or account for those during, once the order is granted. So if they did the test and there was an extra 5.5 pounds per hour of emissions, and now it's 0.1 pounds per hour, the variance is granted during the 0.1 pounds, and that's what would be used during the variance.
But it may be that it sounded like that was a preliminary test and that there may be a correction due to the damper leakage one way or the other, and most likely up. So, okay.
Halfway through the test, when we came out, Stan had noticed that the dampers were leaking on those, and what we ended up doing, we sealed those up while Stan was there and actually ran the first test, they were leaking. The second test, they were sealed off, and they went ahead and pulled this test on that. So it was a combined test of both conditions. Those dampers last weekend were repaired and those sealed off, and I've sent a request into Stan to come out to inspect those and sign off the second NOV that we received on that. So that issue should be resolved.
I'm going to close the hearing now. Ask for any board discussion. If none, do I have a motion?
I move that we accept the petitioner's request and grant the variance.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Gasparino?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Stubblefield?
Yes.
Chair Hurlock?
Yes. Your order is granted. Thank you. Is there any pending business that we know about? Anything coming up? Chris?
We have one potential case that we've booked on December 12th, and we'll go through the regular process. You'll get the documents when you get them.
Okay. What? I noted that there was no member of the public present. The meeting is adjourned.